Thank you. Thank you for joining our mill assessment study kickoff call. We're really glad to have all of you joining us today as we launch this really exciting project in partnership with our contractors, Crow LLC, to look at the mill assessment and funding for the Department of Pesticide Regulation. My name is Karen Morrison. I'm the Acting Chief Deputy Director at DPR. We provide a couple of opening comments and then kick it off to our various teams to walk through what this is going to look like in the coming months and how all of you can get engaged. Next slide, please. So we're going to start by providing context for our mill assessment and how this study project came to be, as well as to share the study goals that we have for the mill study. I'm going to introduce the Crow LLP team who's going to be working through and with all of you in developing recommendations, share a timeline of project milestones, and then details on how to get involved. And then we'll close with a question and answer session. I want to, on my end, introduce the DPR team who's going to be leading the work that we're doing on mill, as well as assisting with today's webinar. Our key team is composed of Felisa de Gonzalez, Martin Barella, and Natalie Gasca. They are respectively our Assistant Director for Legislation and Policy, our Manager for Fiscal and Business Services, and a fellow working for the department this year, and are covering a whole range of different issues, including thinking about fiscal impacts to the department resources, and stakeholder engagement. And they'll all be sharing different pieces over the course of today's webinar. We also have Erin Shimizu, who's helping on the logistics end and will be working as a part of the Q&A session at the end. So you'll be seeing more from her later on this morning. So with that, I believe I'm going to hand this over to talk about context for mill assessment.
Hello, everyone. Just a couple of housekeeping items. As we move forward through this presentation, please feel free to use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We'll address your questions during our questions and answer session at the end of this presentation. Please also keep in mind that this presentation will be recorded and posted on our website for your future reference. With a budget for fiscal year 21-22 of approximately $147 million, the Department of Pesticide Regulations is able to support the critical work of over 400 staff across the state and the enforcement activities at the local level. The department's core source of ongoing funding, known as the DPR fund, comes primarily from the mill assessment, though licensing and registration fees also contribute to it. A mill assessment is collected by DPR on the sale of all registered pesticide products in California. Since 2004, the mill assessment has remained the same for 18 years and is capped at 21 mills. It is collected quarterly and is assessed at the point of sale, at the point of first sale in California. In addition, as statutory requirements by Food and Agricultural Code 12481 stipulates, the CACs receive 7.6 mills of the 21 mills collected to carry out and enforce pesticide and environmental laws and regulations locally. Next slide, please. For the first 10 years, 2.1 mills was sufficient to cover the department's needs. However, the department has faced cost pressures ever since due to several factors: an ongoing expansion in the scope of programs and activities, an increase in staffing levels to keep up with the changing and increasing demand on DPR, an increase in employee compensation, benefits, retirement requirements, an obligation until 2024-2025 to pay down DPR's SB 84 loan of approximately $10 million. Given these, the DPR fund has been in a structural imbalance for the last few years, with expenses being greater than revenues. DPR has sustained this imbalance for several years through its fund reserve and careful budgeting. In order to maintain a positive fund balance and appropriate reserve, DPR reduced its expenditures by 2.5 million on a one-time basis in fiscal year 1920. Since the start of COVID pandemic, we've seen an increase in mill revenue, largely due to the increased sales of disinfectants. We collected 10 million more in 2021 than in fiscal year 1920, whereas in the previous 3 years, on average, had only seen an increase of 1.6 million annually. Because of the variability in revenue resources, one key goal for this study is to think about how to sustain DPR fund in the long term. Next slide.
Next slide. In January of last year, DPR proposed an increase to the mill assessment that also changed the structure of the mill in order to incentivize the use of lower risk pest management products. As part of last year's budget negotiations, DPR received funds to conduct a study with the help of an outside vendor to identify the appropriate structure, source or sources, and level of funding that will allow the department to continue to fulfill its mission. The study will also examine current and future funding needs of the department and of county agricultural commissioners. The goals of this study are to identify how to incentivize the use of safer, sustainable pest management practices and support the state's pest management program in the long term. The study will result in a report with recommendations for alternatives to the current mill structure. In practice, we'll be studying how we collect revenue and how revenue is spent. Next slide, please. Last month, DPR went into contract with Crow LLP. We wanted to provide an opportunity for the project team to introduce themselves. Wendy?
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Wendy Pratt. I'm a managing director with Crow, and I'll just provide a brief overview of Crow and our team, and then pass it on to Eric Nyland to introduce the rest of the team. So Crow is a national accounting and consulting firm. We've been in business for about a little over 75 years, and have 4,000 employees around the country. Our Sacramento team started in 2012, our public sector consulting team, although a few of us have been doing state of California work for many years before that. We have focused much of our state work on environmental resource management, working with departments including DPR in several years ago, Cal Recycle, Cal EPA, Department of Water Resources, and Division of Boating and Waterways. We've done numerous cost allocation studies, program evaluations, workload studies, and rate setting work. Many of our projects involve complex and controversial issues for the state and diverse stakeholders. So we're very comfortable and have developed a sort of a transparent and open process for gathering input, really taking a balanced and independent approach, and then synthesizing results and coming up with actionable and creative recommendations. We have a sort of open perspective on coming up with solutions. Our team members are EcoAlpha. It's an environmental and an engineering consulting company in Sacramento, and GC Green, our disabled veteran business enterprise. And we've worked with both these firms over the years. So looking forward to bringing this group together. Just a bit on myself. I have been working on state of California engagements for 30 years, and my educational background is in ecology, environmental policy, and animal physiology. So I have a little bit more of a science background than many of my colleagues. Over the course of my work, I've all 30 years have been working and supporting the California Beverage Container Recycling Program. Have also worked for 20 years supporting the Division of Boating and Waterways Aquatic Invasive Plant Control Program, and done numerous cost surveys and evaluations, facilitation of stakeholder groups. So really looking forward to this project and communicating with all of you as we move forward. I will now hand it over to my colleague, Eric Nyland.
Yeah, thank you, Wendy. My name is Eric Nyland. I'm also a managing director with Crow, and I'll be a project advisor on this engagement. I have about 26 years of experience in the state of California and local government consulting in a wide range of different areas. A lot of that has background is in rate studies and fee studies, similar to the one we're undertaking here. And so can bring a lot of depth of experience in that area. I have worked in the past for DPR on some engagements around mill, so I'm aware and have a good understanding of the mill process, and have worked for another 20 or so state agencies. So certainly understand the state of California, have worked quite a bit in that arena. So with that, our team also includes a number of staff members: Jason Chan, Margot Masterman, Jamie Hammond, and Garrett Gallagher. All have background with the state of California consulting, all managers and senior staff and staff. And so they'll bring a lot of the secondary research and background and facilitated sessions and focus groups to the table. So collectively, we'll be able to work with the stakeholders in the department on this important project. So with that, I'll turn it back to the DPR folks. And nice to meet everyone.
Next slide, please. Thank you, Erin. So I'll be sharing a timeline of the key project milestones for the next year and a half. From now until summer, Crow's team is going to be reviewing several documents and data related to the mill to get good context on this topic. They're also going to be conducting initial stakeholder information gathering sessions to hear from a few associations per sector at first, to get a general overview of the landscape and hear different perspectives on the challenges and opportunities with the mill assessment. DPR is going to then conduct an analysis of key departmental tasks that are funded by the mill revenue to determine if there's currently a gap in personnel and funding to achieve our programmatic elements and mission objectives. Crow's team is also going to be conducting a fiscal analysis, estimating current and future funding needs for DPR and ag commissioners. Next slide, please. Between summer and fall, Crow will be hosting consultation sessions by stakeholder sector to present their findings and collect your feedback on study progress and your positions on potential mill assessment rates. With the feedback collected from all of our stakeholders and DPR, Crow's then going to develop a few feasible mill assessment proposals. Next slide, please. One less. Thank you. So these recommendations are then going to be in a strawman document, which will be publicly released at the end of the year. And then Crow will be holding public presentations on these proposals at the beginning of 2023. Next slide, please. For the last season, Crow is then going to compile all of the study findings in a report, which will be publicly released in spring 2023. And then as the Crow's team's final task, they're going to finalize their recommendations and a plan to implement these recommended proposals for the mill assessment. That's the last of the big project milestones. And so thank you very much, Erin. That's all for me.
There are many ways you can get involved in the mill study. First, we'll be sending regular updates to the mill distribution list, so feel free to subscribe at this link if you haven't already. We'll also be posting regular updates on our mill study webpage, listed here as well. We highly encourage you to participate in the consultation sessions that Crow will be hosting during the summer, scheduled for 2022. We also recommend reviewing the public reports and attending the public presentations throughout the study. Lastly, we welcome your feedback and questions, which can be submitted via email at projectmillstudy@cdpr.ca.gov. Thank you.
That concludes our formal presentation. We are in the early stages of the study process and look forward to continuing to engage with you throughout the duration of the study. We're happy to answer any questions, and we will begin with questions submitted via the Q&A box and follow up with any live questions. Erin, could you check on the Q&A box?
It looks like we have one question in our Q&A box from an anonymous attendee. And the question is, will there be a public comment period on the draft proposal in addition to pre-release stakeholder consultation?
Thank you, Erin. For this question, I will pass it over to Karen.
Thank you for the question. So we are anticipating having additional stakeholder engagement after the release of the document in December. The exact format for what that public engagement will look like, we haven't finalized at this time, but there will be opportunities for feedback on it.
Thank you.
Yeah. We have a second question. And that is, or we have a few questions. Can we see the last slide of the, oh, excuse me. Yes, we can. I can do that right now. Another question is, confirming the end goal is to appropriately increase the mill assessment?
Yes, that is the end goal.
Another question from Henry. What will be the stakeholder groups?
Thank you, Henry. We have a range of stakeholder groups for the department and county ag commissioners. And so on working with our stakeholders, I'm going to pass it over to Eric or Wendy.
Thanks, Alyssa. Yes, the stakeholder kind of overall groups that we're working with are looking at our initial communications, and then our summer sessions include sort of the agricultural trade groups, environmental groups, sort of focusing on sort of pesticide focused environmental groups, as well as environmental justice groups, county ag commissioners, various sort of state and regulatory agencies, the registrants, and let's see, am I forgetting any there? I think so. We've categorized in those sort of general groups, and we'll be reaching out typically within a group setting for at least our initial outreach.
Thank you, Wendy. Yes, and we are also including as part of that process other state agency partners that the department works with as well.
So you have another question in the Q&A box from Hal. Is the end goal just a recommendation on the new mill rate, or will it also include other process and recommendations to improve operational efficiency of DPR review?
Thanks, Hal. So to answer the first part of the question, the study is also conducting a mini workload analysis, and so understanding the different responsibilities that are funded through the mill. And so the study itself is looking at recommendations for funding, but there may be, with examining of our workload, there may be recommendations that include operational recommendations.
So if I can just add to that, that would encourage that as a part of the stakeholder engagement process, that if you have concerns or feedback on these particular issues, to provide that information to the contractor as a part of the conversation that we're having with Crow and with all of you in the coming months.
We have another question from Hal. How does this work dovetail with the CalPES system, or are they completely separate?
Thank you for the question. For the CalPES system, it's funded separately. And so this is looking specifically at the mill assessment.
We have a question from Taylor. Will the review include other DPR fund sources, such as general fund, special fund, or potential sources when looking at departmental responsibilities?
Thank you, Taylor. So the study is focused on the mill. We, as part of the process, recognize that the department is funded through other one-time sources or other sources. But it is focused on the mill itself.
It looks like that might be all in our Q&A box.
Seeing that there are no other questions in the Q&A, we will move to questions from attendees. We will try to answer as many questions as we can. So if you could please keep your questions to a minute, that would be really helpful. And if you could please raise your hand through the Zoom feature.
We have a question from Jose Arriaga. Let me see. Okay, Jose, go ahead.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me? Can you
Yes,
hear
we
me?
can. Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. My question is, does the scope of the project include looking at the criteria currently used in allocating the pesticide mill per Food and Ag Code 12884, the current criteria that we've been using for a while? Is this going to look at how it's being distributed?
And this is the code section that refers to the county ag commissioner allocation, correct? Is that what you're referring to?
That's correct.
Yes, this will be examining the funding of county ag commissioners as well that are from the mill.
Thank you.
And I'll add that there's an additional layer of that within regulations, so that's something that would be part of a larger conversation that's certainly open for consideration as a part of this study, but would require additional discussion after the study is complete.
So we have no more questions currently right now in the attendees. We do have one more question in the Q&A box, if I can just read that really quickly. Oh, I'm sorry, it's not a question. My apologies.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for your time. I really appreciate you participating in the webinar. The webinar and the PowerPoint slides will be posted on the study webpage. And if you have any additional questions, please direct them to projectmillstudy@cdpr.ca.gov. Also, I'm just realizing that we have another question. And so the question is, are the consultants considering looking at other ways of handling the mill fee so there isn't a potential conflict of interest? Thank you so much for the question. Wendy and Eric, is this something you'd like to?
Sure. I think, we are basically taking a, blank sheet, open slate approach. So we'll be looking at all options. Let me just hand it over to Tommy Abeda, the project manager, to add to that.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, just to echo Wendy's sentiment, we are taking a blank sheet of paper approach, and through our initial sessions and these sessions we'll be holding with all of the stakeholders over the course of the spring and summer, part of the process is to obtain input on what options and potential recommendations are. So again, we're taking a blank sheet approach. All options are on the table, and that's really kind of our focus.
Thank you.
Lisa, we have one more question from Taylor. Will the scope of work for the mill study consultants be included on the website?
Thank you, Taylor. And I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I understand. Is this referring to their background or the scope of the contract? Oh, the scope of the contract. Thank you. I will have to double check if that's something that we are sharing and can get back to you outside of the presentation. We'll just give it another minute in case there's any other questions. Well, again, really appreciate your time and participation in today's webinar. If you'd like to receive updates or follow updates, this slide contains some information where you can do that. And this these slides will also be posted on our webpage. So thank you again for your time this morning. This concludes the webinar.